It is 2026, and the American political map is being entirely redrawn in front of our eyes. From a shock progressive surge to unprecedented fractures in the GOP, the midterm primaries are tearing up the traditional rulebook. If you enjoy content like this, please take a moment to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications so you'll always know when new content is released.
Right, and just real quick before we jump in.
Oh yeah, the update. As a quick update, we continue to monitor the Martin Stevens v. OpenAI matter. It is still not a lawsuit. Martin Stevens has suspended his voluntary quiet period after OpenAI filed its confidential S-1 registration statement on June 8, 2026, without first engaging with him. He views this as extreme disrespect and won't re-enter a quiet period unless it's part of a formal agreement. No settlement is confirmed. The dead man's switch has not been activated, meaning Martin Stevens remains safe.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into the midterms.
Yeah, let's do it. So, stepping into our main focus for today, our mission is really to help you cut through the absolute noise of these 2026 midterms. I mean, we want to look past the daily polling data, the individual primary results, and all those chaotic headlines about legal battles to understand the massive underlying shifts defining this entire election cycle.
Exactly, because to understand the behavior of the electorate right now, you really have to look at the macro climate they are living in. I mean, voters don't operate in a vacuum, right? They operate within their daily economic reality. And right now, that reality is incredibly strained.
It's intense. I like to think about the electorate right now like a pressure cooker. You've got these massive external heat sources, starting with, the sudden sharp gas price spikes that followed the outbreak of the Iran war back on February 28th.
Yeah, that February spike was brutal.
Fuel is just that one price you see in 3-foot-tall neon numbers on your drive to work every single day. So it dictates how people feel about the economy instantly.
It really is a psychological anchor. When those prices spiked, I mean, it created this direct transmission line of geopolitical instability straight into the wallets of American voters.
Oh, absolutely.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a huge part of why the administration pushed so aggressively toward a ceasefire. The domestic electoral pressure from that pocketbook pain was just immense. And, you have to layer that on top of the lingering inflation hangover from that 2021 to 2023 period.
Right. And then you add the Trump administration's current tariffs. I mean, the stated goal is to reindustrialize America, to bring manufacturing back home. But mechanically, a tariff is essentially a tax paid by the importing business.
Right, which they almost always pass directly to the consumer.
Exactly. So in the short term, you have experts and global leaders pointing out that these tariffs are actually worsening inflation. That is the heat turning up on the base of this pressure cooker.
Yeah, and the domestic policy environment is acting as a locked lid on that pressure. We are seeing fiercely polarizing legislation pushing voters to their absolute limits.
Like the ICE deportation bill.
Yeah, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It dramatically strengthened funding for aggressive ICE deportations. And this isn't, it's not abstract policy, it's highly visible enforcement.
Yeah, people are seeing it in their communities.
Right, and it has sparked intense moral outrage and pushback from activists on the left, while simultaneously, it's energizing the enforcement-minded base on the right. Both bases are just boiling over right now.
So when you look at the generic congressional ballot aggregates right now, taking the data from places like Decision Desk HQ, Real Clear Politics, Silver Bulletin, Democrats have roughly a 5.8% advantage.
Right, which sounds significant.
It does. But if you just look at that top line number, you completely miss the most critical dynamic of 2026. This isn't just a story of Democrats beating Republicans. The heat of this pressure cooker is causing internal revolutions within both parties at the exact same time.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating, because the traditional midterm playbook dictates that both parties, sprint toward the political center to capture undecided independent voters, but we are seeing the exact opposite.
Completely the opposite.
On the left, the Democratic base is visibly, aggressively moving away from the center. I mean, so far, progressives have won over 60% of the 2026 Democratic primary races.
That 60% figure is staggering. I mean, it completely bucks the conventional wisdom of how you're supposed to win a swing state or a contested district.
Yeah.
And we are seeing this play out in real time with some very specific high-profile races.
Maine is a perfect case study for this. It's a rural swing state, not typically a hotbed for progressive revolution. The establishment Democrat, Janet Mills, was running but ultimately dropped out amid really low polling.
Right. And in steps Graham Plattner.
Exactly. An Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran running against the longtime Republican incumbent, Susan Collins.
The veteran narrative is key there, I think. It bridges a gap. He came of age fighting in wars he later publicly opposed, and then he returned to a really tough economic landscape.
Yeah.
It gives him a different kind of credibility than your typical lifetime politician.
It allows him to speak to working class frustration without sounding like he's just, reading talking points from a coastal think tank. And we see similar shifts happening in Michigan.
Oh, with Abdul El-Said.
Right. A physician running heavily on a universal healthcare platform. And in California, you have Aisha Wahab, who advanced in the special election to replace Eric Swalwell. Her campaign is almost entirely focused on the very visceral, immediate issue of reducing housing costs.
Which is huge in California. And then there is Ruah Roman in Georgia, a Palestinian-American running for state senate who came in first place in her May primary, forcing a runoff.
Yeah, that was a major upset.
And she did this while being heavily outspent by establishment opponents.
Right.
I mean, how exactly does a candidate with a fraction of the funding bypass the massive machinery of traditional Democratic fundraising?
Well, by short-circuiting the traditional media filter through sheer grassroots mobilization. Look, when a candidate is heavily outspent, they usually lose the television ad war and the mailer war. That's just how it goes.
Right, they get drowned out.
But Rahman's campaign neutralized that disadvantage through intense, sustained door-knocking. Face-to-face interaction builds a level of trust that a 30-second attack ad simply cannot erode. It basically proves that on-the-ground enthusiasm can actually defeat algorithmic high-dollar campaigning.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, though, because I had to push back on the prevailing narrative here. A look at Plattner, El-Said, Wahab, Roman. Are they winning strictly because they have a progressive policy label attached to them? Or are they winning because they feel like authentic, real-world outsiders to an electorate that is just completely exhausted by polished, focus-grouped politicians?
That's a great question. And political communication analysts are asking that exact thing right now. And honestly, the data suggests the latter. Voters are prioritizing authenticity and a sense of shared frustration over strict ideological purity.
So it's more about the vibe of being an outsider.
Yeah, I mean, the progressive label often correlates with an anti-establishment posture, sure. But it's the anti-establishment posture itself that is actually closing the deal with voters. We're even seeing independent candidates emerging as viable alternatives in deeply Republican strongholds like South Dakota and Montana, which just goes to show this anti-establishment wave isn't purely a progressive phenomenon.
It's fascinating that this exhaustion with the status quo isn't a partisan trait at all. We just saw how grassroots energy bypassed the Democratic machinery on the left. But here's where it gets really interesting. That exact same anti-establishment short-circuiting is creating wild dynamics on the right.
Oh, absolutely.
Specifically regarding what used to be the ultimate Republican shield, Donald Trump's endorsement.
Well, before we look at the anomalies, we do have to acknowledge the sheer structural force of that endorsement. I mean, in 2026, Donald Trump successfully ended the political careers of major entrenched Republican figures.
Big names.
Huge names. Senators John Cornyn and Bill Cassidy, as well as Representative Thomas Massie, were effectively taken out. These are massive institutional forces with deep fundraising networks.
To take out sitting, established figures like Cornyn in Texas is just a massive flex of political capital. And you see it down the ballot in Texas, too.
Yeah, everywhere.
Candidates endorsed by the former president won 25 out of 28 primary contests for U.S. congressional seats there, including huge wins by Alex Mueller and John Bonk. And in Georgia's Senate race, Trump-backed Mike Collins defeated Derek Dooley, who had the explicit backing of the sitting Republican governor, Brian Kemp.
So the currency is clearly still potent in places like Texas and certainly in Alabama, where Trump-backed Barry Moore defeated Jared Hudson. But the 2026 primaries are exposing the absolute limits of that power, too. The endorsement is no longer an impenetrable shield.
And the Georgia governor's race is probably the most glaring crack in the armor, right?
Oh, for sure.
Burt Jones had everything on paper. He had Trump's endorsement. He had Governor Kemp's backing. He was like the consensus establishment populist hybrid. But he was defeated by Rick Jackson.
And the mechanics of that defeat are wild, because Jackson is a healthcare billionaire who dropped more than $100 million of his own money into the race.
$100 million? That's hard to even fathom for a primary.
Right, but that volume of capital completely alters the media landscape of a state. When a candidate can spend $100 million out of pocket, they can dictate the narrative so thoroughly that a single endorsement, even from Donald Trump, gets drowned out.
Wow.
It shows that overwhelming financial resources can neutralize political weight. But I think the much more fascinating crack in the armor happened in Iowa.
Oh, the Iowa
Yeah.
shocker. Yeah. Trump endorsed Representative Randy Feenstra, who was a very known quantity, but Feenstra lost to Zach Lon. And Lon wasn't a massive self-funder like Jackson. He was a relative unknown. He ran championing the Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA movement, actively pushing back on the Trump administration over its embrace of pesticides.
Which is just a highly effective strategy by Lon. He maintains support among strict conservatives by championing rigid ideological policies. Like, he pushed for a total ban on abortion and advocated for keeping liberal ideology out of classrooms.
So he checked all the standard conservative boxes.
Exactly, but he coupled that baseline conservatism with this hyper-specific MAHA platform regarding food systems and health.
But wait, I struggle to buy that a grassroots anti-pesticide campaign in Iowa, of all places, a massive agricultural hub where big ag basically is the economy, can actually take down a Trump-endorsed incumbent. Is this actually about pesticides, or is MAHA just a convenient vehicle for voters who are tired of top-down party dictates?
Well, it's acting as a really powerful wedge issue. The MAHA platform forces conservative voters in farming states to choose between traditional corporate agricultural interests and a new populist focus on personal health and anti-corporate grievance.
Ah, I see.
It allows a voter to rebel against the party's top-down directives without feeling like they are abandoning their core conservative principles.
So if a candidate like Zach Lon can win like that, it means the grassroots MAA movement is beginning to evolve into independent factions. They still align with the broader populist ideology, sure, but they are highly motivated by specific local silos and are willing to completely ignore the top-of-the-ticket endorsements to get what they want.
Yeah, it is a true fracturing of the base, whether through massive self-funding like Rick Jackson or hyper-ideological grassroots energy like Zach Lon. Voters are proving they will bypass the power structures of their own party if they feel their immediate frustrations aren't being addressed.
Okay, so we've been talking about the pressure cooker and how it's affecting the voters and the candidates on the ground. But what happens when the legal battles over the actual rules of the election threaten to lock the lid of that pressure cooker down completely?
Right, because that's the other half of the story.
Because the 2026 midterms aren't just a fight over who runs. They are a bare-knuckle institutional battlefield over how the election itself is conducted.
We are seeing an unprecedented level of federal investigation and state-level legislative maneuvering regarding voting infrastructure right now. Let's look at the federal level first. The DOJ and the FBI are currently conducting highly publicized investigations into voter registration efforts.
Yeah, in January, FBI agents executed a search warrant at the Fulton County, Georgia Election Center. They seized around 600 boxes of ballots and records.
Huge seizure.
And then in June, they searched the Cleveland offices of the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, seizing computers and directly questioning the staff. Logistically, when you seize the computers and physical records of a voter registration group months before an election, you don't just investigate them, you effectively paralyze their operation.
Which is exactly why this has become a massive point of contention. I mean, election experts and voting rights organizations characterize these investigations as federal interventions designed to intimidate election officials and suppress voter registration groups ahead of November.
Well, the Justice Department obviously says something completely different.
Right. They maintain that these searches are strictly court-authorized investigations into potential fraud. We're just reporting what both sides are saying here, but the tension is undeniable.
And while the federal government is stepping in on one side, you have state-level pushback on the other. In Connecticut, Democratic Governor Ned Lamont signed a law restricting immigration enforcement at sensitive locations. Crucially, this explicitly bans ICE from polling places.
Yeah, and the mechanics of that ban are a direct response to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act we discussed earlier.
Right, the deportation funding.
Exactly. When federal funding for deportation surges, the fear within mixed-status communities naturally skyrockets. So banning IC from polling places is an attempt by a state governor to prevent that federal enforcement fear from having a chilling effect on voter turnout.
It is a direct state versus federal standoff over who controls the environment where a vote is cast.
Totally.
We also saw the rules of voter eligibility fiercely debated in the legislature itself. The House passed the Save America Act, which would have required registering voters to provide literal proof of citizenship. And this isn't just checking a box under penalty of perjury. This means providing a physical passport, a birth certificate, or naturalization papers.
And logistically, millions of eligible voters simply do not have those documents readily accessible, which creates a massive administrative hurdle to registration.
Yeah, getting a passport takes weeks or months.
Right. Now, that bill ultimately died in the Senate in June when 4 Republicans joined Democrats to block it. But the push to change the fundamental requirements of registration shows just how high the institutional stakes are right now.
So what does this all mean? It feels like we're watching two different sports simultaneously. One is the actual game on the field with these wild primary races we just talked about, and the other is a high-stakes legal battle over the actual size and shape of the field itself.
That's a perfect analogy. And honestly, the ultimate makeup of the 120th Congress might not be determined by these primary races or even voter enthusiasm at all. It might be entirely dictated by the judicial branch. We have to talk about Louisiana v. Calais.
Oh, right, the Supreme Court ruling.
The Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Louisiana v. Calais is arguably the most consequential event of the 2026 cycle so far. The ruling significantly weakened Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Which does what exactly, for those who aren't constitutional lawyers?
Right, so Section 2 is essentially the legal guardrail that prevents states from drawing electoral maps that intentionally dilute the voting power of minority communities.
Okay, so weakening that guardrail has to have immediate structural consequences.
Massive consequences. Legal scholars and analysts project that this ruling will allow Republican-controlled legislatures in the South to break up or eliminate existing majority-minority districts. The projection is that this single judicial decision could shift up to 12 House seats from Democratic to Republican control.
Wow, 12 seats. I mean, 12 seats fundamentally alters the balance of power in Washington. You have to remember how razor-thin the margins in the House of Representatives typically are. Shifting a dozen seats through a judicial ruling regarding redistricting changes the entire mathematical baseline of the midterm elections before a single voter even walks into a voting booth.
Exactly. The map has quite literally been structurally redrawn. I mean, you have new court-mandated congressional districts in Ohio and Utah, you have mid-cycle redraws happening in Missouri, North Carolina, and Texas, and massive changes in California.
It really is two different sports.
It is. And all of this brings us right back to the pressure cooker. You have voters dealing with painful economic realities and polarizing domestic policies. You have bases rebelling against their own establishments, choosing grassroots authenticity over party dictates.
And underneath all of that, the foundational rules of how districts are drawn and how votes are collected are being fought over in courtrooms and federal raids.
Right. The heat is at an absolute maximum.
So, as we look toward November, what is the ultimate takeaway for you? What are the biggest unknown here?
Well, the biggest wild card of November 2026 might not actually be who wins.
Really?
Yeah. With the traditional rulebooks torn up, deep institutional fracturing in both parties, and the mechanics of voting under such unprecedented legal scrutiny, the true test will be the resilience of the system itself. I think the lingering question you have to mull over is whether a deeply fractured, overheated electorate will even accept the results of a fundamentally altered political landscape when this pressure cooker finally pops.
Wow, that is a thought to take with you. The map is entirely new, the rules are shifting, and November is coming. If you found this episode valuable, please like, subscribe, share, follow, and turn on notifications. It helps us continue bringing you content like this and ensures you never miss future releases.